I'm going to tell you guys an absolutely crazy story. It has to do with paranormal activity. Believe it what you believe it if you want. It's fine. Just know this is a corporate work talk channel, and this has nothing to do with the story I'm going to tell you. This was a couple summers ago. I was on a plane flying to Florida. I know what you're thinking. It's always Florida. And I was taking my dog with me. My dog is a medical dog. And so she was on the plane with me. I got an extra seat just in case. And so I was sitting next to this girl. I was in the middle seat, dog on the right. She was on the left. Oddly enough, we did not talk the entire time. Up until like maybe 10 minutes before landing, she said, "Oh, you have a cute dog." And I said, "Oh, thanks." And she said, "What do you do for work?" And I said, "Oh, I do marketing." "What do you do for work?" And she said, "Oh, this might be weird, but I hunt demons." I said, "Oh," right? Because one thing about me is I'm going to keep my judgment to myself, but I'm also nosy. And I said, "Oh, tell me a little bit more about that." And she said, "Yeah, I get hired and I go and I have to remove demons and like bad spirits from people's houses." And I said, "That's crazy. Tell me more about it." And she said, "Yeah, you have to be careful. Demons will like attach to you and you won't know it." And she was saying that, like a normal instance for her, she had to go in someone's house and remove a demon from their house, and holy water is the only thing that works. And she's going on and on about her job. And she's telling me, like, don't trust people, like, you can see it in their eyes, all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there on this plane that is 10 minutes to landing. And I'm just like, you know what? Good luck, girlfriend. She gives me some book recommendations, and I think I screenshot them, and I'll try to go find if I can see it. But essentially, she was like, "Yeah, this is the world that I was born into, and this is my job, and the only thing that works is holy water, and you have to say, in the name of Jesus Christ, like, I rebuke you." I'm like, okay, and I'm thinking, like, whatever. I go to Florida. I'm playing on the beaches, I'm doing whatever. One thing about me is I don't think of a conversation again until I'm like, "Ooh, that's relevant." And so whatever, I'm in Florida. I don't have the best time in Florida. I don't really think about it. I fly back home. I end up renting my place out, and so I need to move into a van. And so I don't need to, but I was planning to do van life. So I'm renting a van. I move into the van. Within 1 week, the van breaks down on me. This is a van that I paid $1,000 for the month. Van breaks down on me in the middle of Vegas in summer heat. I don't think much of it. I just problem solve. So in the middle of Vegas, I decide, well, I have to get another van. I end up buying a van, obviously financing it. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to be so much happier because my dog hated the rental van because it was a diesel and it was so loud. Poor baby. Now I'm in this van. I'm so excited. We had to stay in an Airbnb a couple days in Vegas just because the van was broken, the heat. Keep in mind that van also, the battery went out on me. The first night that I slept in the van, the window broke and fell all the way down, the front window. So at this point, I am just pushing through. And I'm like, no, because I'm stubborn, right? I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm not thinking anything about the conversation. Keep that in mind. I buy the new van. I'm driving away. It is my first time driving. Bam, I crack the windshield. A fucking rock cracks the windshield. Again, I think nothing of it because I'm like, one thing about me is I will keep going. You can't keep me down long. And then I get to my destination. It's dark. It's in St. George, Utah. Actually, Hurricane, Utah, if anyone knows where that is. It's dark. I pull in. I tell the girl, like, I need a campsite. And she's like, do you want, essentially she was asking me if I wanted one that was like in the front or the back. And I said, I don't really care, whatever. And the ones in the front were like $70 a night. And I was like, no, I can't afford that. So I go to the back. Almost get stuck in the sand. So I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to the front. It's dark enough. Obviously no one's renting this place, whatever. So I'm pulling in like this. Keep in mind, my van is 21 and a half feet long. And so I pull in and I back up to even out. Boom, get stuck in the sand. Literally wheels spinning, stuck in the sand. First night in my new van. I said, oh, okay. I call a tow truck. Oh, they're all busy. So I'm laying there. It's maybe like 10 p.m. at night. Again, I don't think about it. I end up getting pulled out by like one of those pulley things. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know. It's like a pulley thing. It's not like a real truck. So it pulls me out. We go back to sleep. Wake up. We finish our drive. We're going all the way to Colorado. I get to Colorado. I get into the Airbnb. I think, another moment of reprieve. Negative. My dog does not like Airbnb. She then rips off, and she's a very mild mannered dog. She ripped off her leash from the wall, like it was like hanging on the wall, ripped the whole, like, like little hook thing down. Cool. Had to drywall that. While I'm at this Airbnb, that thought pops back in my head, and I go, oh my gosh, that girl was talking to me about demons, and I wonder what's happening. Again, at this point, whatever you believe is whatever you believe, okay? I'm not trying to tell you otherwise. All I know is I was in a dark place, and I said, you know what? I'm tired. And so I saged myself. I saged my entire van. I saged everything. I saged my dog. I didn't obviously have holy water chilling by me. And I just went on. And guess what? Everything was peachy after that. And I was thinking about all the things that went wrong after I met that girl. And do I think that she was a negative spirit? No, not at all. I think she was just explaining that entities will attach to you in a negative way. And anyways, this is a crazy story. This is not my normal content. It is just something that came to my mind this morning that I was like, oh my gosh, I should tell this story to see if anyone else has similar stories to this.
A lot of people wonder why they say in the Appalachians not to go into the woods at night, not to whistle, not to sing, and always make sure you close your windows and you lock your doors and absolutely never respond to anything that calls your name. So this goes back to an old Native American belief in the area that these mountains were home to spirits and that they would come out and wander during the night. And I've heard two stories that will give you an idea as to why you should not do these things at night. So there was a man named Jeff. He lived outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And he was told about this spot up in the mountains where there was some good mushrooms. But no one would go to this area because they were very superstitious. So Jeff thinks, I'm going to go to this area and get a good haul. And, what do I care? There's no such thing as ghost. So he goes out, he parks his car, he goes into the woods, and he's hunting for several hours. Starts to notice the sun is going down, it's getting dark. It's time to head back to his vehicle. Now, as he's walking through the woods, he all of a sudden hears, Jeff, come here. Come, Jeff. And he hears his name being called. So Jeff knows from legend that if you hear something calling your name, you do not respond. So he just keeps on walking, and all of a sudden he hears this louder and louder, his name being called. And then he starts hearing screaming coming from deep in the woods. And he hears laughter, and he hears what sounds like people just talking all around him. So he starts walking faster and faster, and he knows the way he came in, but for some reason it feels like the trees are almost moving, and he is going in the wrong direction now. And finally he comes out sort of to this open area, and he sees a man standing out in this field, but he's turned around looking in the opposite direction. So Jeff goes up and approaches this guy and says, excuse me, sir, do you know the route back to the highway? And when this man turns around, Jeff realizes that it's himself, and he's all bloody and bruised, and he's just staring back at him. So Jeff runs as fast as he can for several miles, gets in his car, and drives back home. Later that night, he's awoken to hearing voices inside his room calling out to him, Jeff, come back, come. And so Jeff never went back into the woods again, mushroom hunting. And the second story I've heard is there was a couple who decided they were going to live in the Appalachian Mountains for a summer. They find this cabin for rent, and they're surprised at how cheap the price is for 6 months. So they rent this cabin, and they go out there and they bring all their stuff to move in. And this guy in a truck, he meets them out there, and he's very nervous. And he tells them, hey, at night, you're going to want to lock your doors and close the blinds. And then he gets in his truck and he leaves as fast as he can. So this couple is just in awe of how nice this log cabin is and the fact that they got it from, this huge steal. So that night they go into their cabin, they make themselves comfortable. It gets dark, and all of a sudden they hear a thump, thump, thump up on the roof. And it sounds like something or someone is walking across the roof. And then they hear banging on the side of the house, and they hear these large booms and creaks and sounds coming all around them from outside. It sounds almost like their house is being invaded. Eventually, the sound dies down and daylight comes. The next day, same thing happens, and for several weeks this goes on. So finally, the husband is fed up, and he says, you know what, I'm done. We're taking our home back. We're tired of being harassed. So in the middle of the night, when this sounds start happening again, he goes to the window, he opens the curtains, and then he looks out the window, and standing out behind the window is a woman. And she has this pale, long face and white, gray hair going over her shoulders. And he notices she has solid white eyes, and she's just staring at him. And then she points directly at him, and that's when all hell breaks loose. He starts hearing banging on the roof, banging on the sides of the house. The house feels like almost like an earthquake is happening. And then he shuts the blinds. They run into the bathroom, and they hide for the rest of the night. The next day, they decide, we're through with this, and they leave, never to return again.
So I've had some really weird experiences in the past with paranormal stuff. So here's one of the stories that really majorly sticks with me to this day. If you don't want to believe it, then don't believe it, I don't care. But so basically, I was around 9 at the time, I think. And I was sat in this room. This has always been my room ever since I was a kid. And let's put it this way, my desk is here and my bed was here with a mirror kind of behind the bed for context. So I was sat at the desk and I was facing the wall because I was writing something, doing homework, doing whatever I was doing at 9 years old, whatever. My dog was on the bed behind me. I then started hearing my dog growl, in which he was quite, I don't know, it was just really weird behaviour for him, so I turned around to see what was wrong with him. And then instantly, in this mirror that's behind my bed, I see a glimpse of a woman stood there staring at me. Clear as day, but it was only there for literally like 0.5 seconds, like not that long at all. Young me just looks at the mirror like... So anyway, I went downstairs because I'm pretty sure I was about to tell my mom or something. Either way, I ended up in the kitchen. It was around Christmas at this point, so my mom was like, Mia, do you want to go put your Christmas tree up in your room? Because I used to have this little pink one. And I was like, no. And she's like, why not? So I told her that I'd just seen a woman in the mirror. Me being young, she just like played it off like it was nothing. She was just like, stop being silly, you know. So it never really got mentioned much after that. But I'd say around 2 weeks later, maybe, my mom and my auntie went to see a psychic, like a medium. And someone came through to my auntie. So they were like the little blonde girl that's always dancing around in a room. Obviously me, I was naturally blonde. I did dance at the time, so I was always like going over the choreography and, you know, making up my own and stuff. She was like, tell her that that was me in the mirror and tell her not to be scared. I was just coming in checking in on her. This person turned out to be my great nan, who I only technically met once, and it was a few days after I was born. But what was really weird about it is my mom hadn't told anyone in the family that, you know, I'd experienced this. So there's no way that this woman could have known that. And my auntie didn't know until after, when my mom told her that she was on about me, that everything made sense. And obviously me being young at the time, my mom told me and I started crying. But yeah, that is one story that really sticks with me. I've got so many more, but that one I always tell people first. Really strange experience.
I'm back with another spooky, scary story time. And what would you do if somebody followed you home from the grave or something? And welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is going to be safe. Okay, so somebody emailed me this story and told me this happened to their cousin in Connecticut. back in the year 2018. And baby, I would have moved immediately because according to them, their cousin got a temporary night job helping clean up around the old cemetery. And not digging graves or nothing like that, but mostly like moving the flowers and cleaning up the trash after the funeral, locking gates, stuff like that. Now, the cemetery itself was old, like 1800s old. And apparently, locals have been talking about weird things happening there for years. People were hearing crying at night, seeing somebody standing in between the graves, hearing voices calling their names, and nobody else was around. Now, of course, he didn't believe in any of that. He thought people were just being dramatic. Now, one thing that the older groundkeeper kept warning him about was this. If you hear somebody calling your name after midnight, do not answer. And whatever you do, don't follow anybody deeper into the cemetery at night. So, naturally, he laughed it off. Until one night in October, he said it was cold, it was foggy, and barely anybody around. He said that the cemetery felt weirdly quiet that night too. No bugs, no wind, nothing. He said it was just pure silence. So around maybe like 12:30 in the morning, he said he's locking up one of the side gates when suddenly he hears a woman humming. He said it was soft, not like singing words. She was just humming. And at first, he thought maybe somebody got stuck inside after visiting a grave late. So he grabbed his flashlight and he started looking around. That's when he saw her, y'all. He said it was a woman and she was dressed completely in white, standing near one of the older graves way back in the back. He said she had long dark hair, she was barefoot, and she was standing completely still. Now, this is where it gets creepy. He said when the flashlight hit her, she didn't react at all. She said she didn't blink, she didn't move, nothing. Just standing there, staring at the grave. Hell no. So he called out, "Ma'am, the cemetery is closed." And he said he got no response. Then slowly, without turning around, she started walking deeper into the cemetery. Baby, he should have left right there. He should have left right there. But instead, he followed her. He said the deeper he walked, the colder it got. And he said, and the humming started again. Except now it sounded like it was closer. Like it was coming from all around him. And then suddenly, he said the woman disappeared. He said she was just gone. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Now, he's panicking at this point because suddenly he realized he's somehow near the oldest section of the cemetery. The part where people avoided. And that's when he heard his name right behind him. He said it was clear as day. He turned around expecting another worker, but nobody was there. Nobody. Then he heard it again, and he said it was closer. This time sounding exactly like his mother. And they said, "David." He said it didn't even sound scary at first. It sounded comforting, like somebody was trying to help him. And he said then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The voice was coming from inside one of the mausoleum. What the fuck? Baby. He said he ran, and I would have too. I would have. He said while he was running, he could hear footsteps behind him crushing the leaves. He said slow at first, and then it became faster, matching his speed. And every time that he looked back, he thought that he could see a white dress between the graves getting closer. Now, somehow, he finally made it back to the maintenance building near the front gate. He said he locked himself inside, and he was completely out of breath. And that's when the knocking started. He said it was 3 slow knocks on the door, then silence, and then 3 more. He said he looked through the little window on the door expecting a prank. And he said it was nobody there. But the humming started again, right outside the building. Then suddenly, the motion lights turned on by themselves. And standing near the gate was a woman in white again. Again, y'all. Except this time, she was smiling. And according to him, the smile looked so unnatural. He was like, it was too wide. Like her mouth stretched further than it should have. And then he said the lights shut off and it was completely dark. Completely dark, y'all. And when he turned them back on, she was closer. Way closer. Now, at this point, he said he called his boss freaking out, asking him to come back immediately. And the first thing his boss asked him was, did you follow her? Baby. He said he hadn't even told him anything yet. But before he could answer, the humming suddenly stopped. And it was dead silence. Then came one final knock directly on the door beside his head. And he said this one was loud. He said he quit the next fucking morning. Yeah, I would have quit too. Said he never went back. But this is the part that disturbed me the most. For weeks afterwards, he said he kept waking up around 3 a.m. hearing the humming outside of his apartment window. And one night, he finally looked. And standing across the street, he said that broken street light that they had, was a woman dressed in completely white. And she was barefoot, just staring up at his apartment. Ain't no motherfucking way. Yeah. I'll see y'all in the next story time. I love y'all.
This woman volunteered to sit next to a dead body on a plane, and she regrets it to this day. The man in 43A died halfway across the Atlantic Ocean. Our author, we'll call her Desiree. She was sitting near the front of the plane when she started hearing all the commotion coming from further back in the aisles. It sounded like somebody gasping and like retching for air. It was super loud at first, but then it just became quieter and quieter. The PA came on and they were asking for any medical professionals to come and help. Nobody came, and after a few minutes, the man's voice turned to like a gargle, and then it was just silence. Now this man was old, but he was not that old. So they're assuming it was likely like a heart attack or like a brain aneurysm or something along those lines. But that was all the information she got just from it being passed down the aisles from passenger to passenger. The pilot came on the intercom and basically just said, we're going to be returning back to New York due to a medical emergency. Then a few minutes later, one of the flight attendants came over the PA system, and they asked for any volunteers that would be willing to sit next to the deceased passenger. I guess the flight was completely full, and the kid that was sitting next to the guy was not feeling comfortable, so they were seeing if anyone was willing to trade. Now, Desiree is not really sure why she volunteered. I think it was just her morbid curiosity, and she figures that's probably going to be the most interesting seat on the plane at this time. So she went and she traded with the queasy looking teenager. He went back to her seat and she came up to his. When she got to her new seat, she was kind of second guessing her decision because her only experience with dead bodies was at her grandmother's funeral. The man's body sat upright in his seat. He was basically buckled in and he was covered with a blue fleece blanket. She could tell that his hands were in his lap, crossed over each other. She could only tell this because they were actually peeking out from underneath the blanket because it wasn't fully covering him. So she had thought to ask for another blanket, but she figured she'd just deal with it. She ends up closing her eyes and just going to sleep. Due to some turbulence, she woke up about an hour later. Cabin lights were off, and most of the passengers seemed to be sleeping. She looked past the man and out the window, and she started just looking off into the abyss that was like the night sky. But then she stopped herself, and she realized that when she had fallen asleep, the window was closed. And then she realized something else was off. The man's posture had somehow changed. His hands remained in his lap, but the blanket that was around his upper torso was somehow kind of twisted now, almost like he had turned to look out the window. So she got curious, and she started peeking underneath the blanket to see what exactly this man looked like. She lifted it little by little, and then eventually she pulled the entire thing off, and she realized he was looking out the window. Now, because he's turned away, she can't make out any details on his face, but she can see his reflection in the window, and it looks like his eyes are open, and it almost looks like they're moving. She's staring at the reflection for a full minute, and then one of the passengers next to her basically says, like, what are you doing? You need to cover him back up, like, give him some peace. And so she's trying to explain to the lady, like, no, I don't know, he might be still alive or something is going on, but I can see that his eyes are moving. As she's trying to explain this, suddenly the plane jolts with turbulence, and everyone is sent flying. Everything in the plane gets thrown around, coffee cups, purses, bags, everything. And the flight attendants are now running around basically trying to tell everyone, like, take your seats, like, we need to buckle our seatbelts. The pilot comes over the PA system and basically says, we're experiencing some really unexpected turbulence, but what's odd is that none of the other planes in the area are experiencing this sort of turbulence or any sort of weird like weather patterns. When the plane jolted, the man's body flew forward and hit the seat in front of him and then flew back into his seat, but his head was still facing out the window. Now everyone is still in a full panic, but she's still looking at his reflection and his eyes are still moving from left to right, left to right. She looked past the reflection and she realized there was not a single cloud in the sky, but the outside looked like it had like a weird kind of green hue to it. Now Desiree wanted to be anywhere but in that seat at that exact moment, so she decided she was going to get up and go to the bathroom. Even though everything's shaking around, she did not want to be in that seat because she just had like a horrible feeling about what was going on here. So she ran to the bathroom and she locked herself in, and that worked for about a half an hour. And then eventually the flight attendants came over to the door and they basically were like, hey, everyone needs to return to their seat because it's getting really bad out here. When she got back to her seat, she realized that the body looked like it had almost like hit the window a couple of times. I'm assuming just in the craziness of everything, his body flew forward and hit the window. The pilot comes back on the PA system and basically said, we're in an extremely rare like weather anomaly and everyone needs to get into the emergency positions. At this point, Desiree is scared for her life, and she actually kind of forgets about the fact that there's a body right next to her. But then she hears a loud bang, and she realizes that his body is flying against the window. He is whipping back and forth. She said like a flag in a hurricane. Like, it was just so quick. This happens a good like 5 or 6 times. Over the sound of everyone screaming and people leaving messages for their loved ones on their phone, she could hear something. And it sounded like the last time that his head hit the window, there was a crack. As she looked over at the man's body, it almost looked like he was doing this intentionally, like he was slamming his head against the window. Eventually, on the final hit, he broke both panes of the glass, and now the window was exposed. So immediately all the oxygen masks fell, and the pilot came on the PA system basically saying that there was a cabin breach, and everyone needed to put on their oxygen masks. Obviously, at this point, everyone is in a full-blown panic. So Desiree puts on her oxygen mask and she looks over at the body. And she realizes that it's like leaning out the window, like he's trying to climb out almost. She's trying to pull him back in, but at this point, his body is almost halfway out the window. And all she could picture were those eyes, just looking out the window, back and forth and back and forth. At this point, it feels like his entire body is about to pull out that entire row of seats. So she does the only thing that she can think of, and she unclasps his seatbelt. And then, in a split second, his entire body flies out that window. And all she can think is, whatever that guy was seeing out that window, she hopes that he just goes to it and leaves everyone else be. And after a few minutes, the turbulence actually stops, and she can no longer see that green hue that she was seeing outside. Thankfully, at this point, they're pretty close to the airport, so they go and they land safely. And what was written in the report was that there was a weird weather anomaly, and a passenger who was already deceased had been ejected from the plane. Now, she tried to tell people about this, but nobody believed her, and Desiree will think about those eyes for the rest of her life. See, and this is why I don't fly anywhere. I hope you guys enjoyed today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this story, because the idea of like something like this happening to one individual, even though so many people experienced it, sounds wild to me. I believe it though. Anyways, throw a heart on the video if you liked it, and go ahead and give me a follow if you like stories like this, because I tell them all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
So we have the sound of front doors slamming shut. We have the sounds of work boots stomping down the hallway when no one's home. And honestly, so much more weird stuff that a creator on here is dealing with. So I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that and then maybe offer her a little bit of advice if she's still dealing with it and needs it. So it seemed like this all started with the sound of the front door slamming shut. And usually whenever doors open and close, you hear sounds, over time they get louder. This one's getting softer, and I've never heard of that happening, and she described it as almost like it was trying to be more sneaky, and it made my skin crawl. And then she also mentioned the sound of work boots stomping through hallways. The people that live around her, her family, are blue collar, they wear work boots, she knows the sound. It is that sound, but no one will be in the house. There was also a weird one too. She said there's like the silverware drawer in her kitchen will open and close, and spoons will go missing, but it's like specifically only the spoons she uses, which is rude. And then she started noticing if she would look at her reflection whenever she walked past something, It looked like there was a dark mass behind her. There's also a full apparition of a man that she will see out of the corner of her eye sitting on her couch, smiling, sitting straight up, looking at the TV. Hair was pulled on TikTok Live one night, and she's seen a girl with messy black hair peeping at her from around her door. But one thing that stuck out to me was she said she will often see someone she thinks she knows in the house. Like once she thought she saw her husband's sister, and so she ran into the bathroom because her husband was showering, and she was like, "Shut the door, your sister's here." And then the sister wasn't in the house at all. And she called the sister, and the sister was like, "I'm next door in my house. What are you talking about?" But it isn't just her that this is happening to. The sister is also seeing her when she's not around. But it's always centered around Ellie. She's also hearing things outside of her window. It's a whole mess. So I think there's multiple things going on. I do think the property has some things lurking outside, but there's just a lot of mimicking happening, and the fact that it's getting better at it makes me worry that it's an actual mimic. Cleansings and banishments first, for especially Ellie, especially the sister-in-law as well, but really anyone on the property could and should be doing it if they're willing to. Also, ignoring it. I know that's easier said than done, especially when you're like confident that it is who you think it is. But if you can ignore it as best as you can, everyone, that will stop feeding it energy. Mimics are the worst.
Her eyes, they blinked sideways. This story comes in from a listener. Let's dive in. I genuinely believe I met something pretending to be human. So a couple of years ago, I was working third shift at a grocery store, and this woman comes in who just instantly gave off this vibe that something just was off. Something wasn't right. Everything in the store felt weird, and I don't know how else to explain it, but she walked slow. Not like an elderly slow, but like a robotic slow. I remember watching her as she kept going through the aisles because I couldn't stop looking at her. It was like I was drawn to her, and she never blinked once. Like, I'm serious. She never blinked. I did catch her smiling at people as they walked by her, but even her smile felt off, and it felt delayed, like she would be turning back her head and smiling versus smiling when you see the person. She gets done shopping and she comes up to my register, and I kid you not, she only put a bottle of water up there, and she looked me right in the face and said, "I can always tell who notices." And I just kind of looked at her and then looked away and continued to scan the water because I didn't know how to respond to that. A few seconds later, I go to hand her change, and she tilts her head and looks at me and says, "Does your skin always feel this warm?" I went to go hand her receipt, and she didn't take it. She just stared at my hand like she was studying it. And in that moment, for the first time, the entire time I seen her, she blinked. But it wasn't a blink like we blink. It was a sideways blink. Like doors closing in her eyes. I stepped back so fast that I almost knocked over the rack of chips, and she just looked at me and smiled that weird smile again and then walked out. Thank you so much for sending this story to me. I've never received one yet about a reptile person, but you know, I believe you. People say they have encountered people who their eyes blink sideways. There's even celebrities that people claim. So like, guys, do you believe in this? Drop it in the comments. And are there any celebrities you know of that you think might be a reptile person? Drop that down below. If you like spooky stories, make sure to follow along and send me your spooky, creepy, scary, unexplainable stories. My email is in the bio. As always, stay strange, stay blessed, share this out.
What if I told you I caught a demon on camera? A lot of you wouldn't believe me, but some of you know I'm a professional ghost hunter. So let me tell you what happened, and then I'll show you the photo. It was late, it was probably around midnight, and me and my ghost hunting partner were going on a ghost hunt. The story of this place is that a person died here. Specifically, it was a band member. And there were some discussions going on whether or not that he was murdered. So we were specifically there to figure out what happened to him. Also, this place had been abandoned for years and was a local teen hangout. There was graffiti all over the walls. The place was pretty nasty. While we were there, we kept hearing a male's voice and seeing like a weird light, which now that I'm thinking about it, that kind of sounds like aliens. Anyways, we had set up our equipment and we were waiting to see if anything wanted to communicate when the REM pod went off near the fireplace. So we had Nick go show the camera up inside the fireplace. But it was a weird angle, so Nick didn't actually look in the fireplace, only the camera did. The image that we caught up that chimney chills me to the bone. We didn't actually see it until I was editing. At first I thought it was an owl, but it's way too big to be an owl. Let me know what you guys think.
This hotel housed many famous people during the golden age of Hollywood and is now one of the most famous haunted hotels in Arizona. And you guys are not ready for the creepy spirits that have been seen here. Some interesting features of this hotel is a well in the basement, which is said to be a portal, and having a pool on the 3rd floor. That pool was actually built for Marilyn Monroe. It was just outside where she liked to stay at the hotel. Make sure to stick around till the end because I have a crazy story that happened to me with that pool. Welcome to my series, Haunted US, where we are exploring all the paranormal cases and cryptids of every state in the United States. We are currently focusing on Arizona and in particular, Hotel San Carlos of Phoenix, Arizona, built in 1928. The golden age of Hollywood frequented there, including Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, Mae West, Gene Autry, and many more. The rooms that they frequented the most are plaqued with their name. Most famous haunting of this hotel is that of Leon Jensen on May 27th of 1928, which was only weeks after this hotel had opened. 22-year-old Leon allegedly took her own life by jumping to her death from the hotel's roof. She was known as a pretty blonde and is now frequently seen inside the room that she had last checked into, room 720. She is seen dressed all in white, sitting at the foot of the bed, then walking towards the door and vanishing. This hotel is also famous for the spirits of children there. Before it was a hotel, this was the site of the city's first school that was built in 1874. And before that, this land was the site for Native American worship. In 1974, this hotel did join the Historical Hotels of America. Now, getting back to those kids, when I was going to stay there for my birthday recently, I saw a little girl who came and visited me who was from this hotel. And she told me that there was a pool on the 3rd floor, which I didn't actually know at the time. She also said that that pool was drained and that somebody got hurt really bad in that pool. When I got there, there was a pool on the 3rd floor. It sure enough was drained and makes me wonder if somebody had gotten injured in that pool. Being there, we definitely experienced ghosts of children, many children, and we even talked to a soldier through our spirit box in a session that we did. Unfortunately, almost all of our audio was lost, and so I wasn't able to make the fun video with my friends that I'd been hoping to, but I would love to hear about if you guys have experienced anything in this hotel. And if you enjoy videos like these, make sure to show your support by following, liking, sharing, and saving for later for when you need something scary. And if you want to see your state next, make sure to comment it below.
Never leave a Ouija board behind, especially in a place that's haunted, because what follows you home may never leave. Welcome to the Graveyard Shift, your late night corporate hub for terrifying tales. Grab your favorite mug, clock in, and lock your doors. The Graveyard Shift officially starts now. Deep in the backwoods of Idaho, about 15 miles from an actual town, there's this massive abandoned factory, completely rusted out. A group of college kids broke in late one night to get a scare, brought a Ouija board, sat it in a circle, and started using it. But of course, there's always that one guy who doesn't take things seriously. He started intentionally breaking the rules and mocking the spirit and mocking the board and laughing and making fun. Right then, as he's doing this, the temperature in the room plummets. It gets freezing cold. The air in the room started smelling like heavy copper and stagnant water. Everybody is getting super uncomfortable at this point. So they decide to just pack up to explore the rest of the building. But in their rush, they make a fatal mistake while playing the Ouija board. They don't say goodbye. So about an hour later, after them checking out the rest of the abandoned building, they go back to collect their things and they find that the Ouija board is gone. They search every single inch of this building and they cannot find it. And there's dust on the floor from where they had walked. They see their footprints and their footprints only. There's no new fresh footprints or anything like that, or anybody that could have came in and taken the board. They were the only people in the building. So fast forward a couple months after the fear wears off, the three of them decide to go back to the abandoned building in the middle of the night. And they're hanging out in the upper room overlooking the massive empty floor below. And suddenly they hear this really heavy banging coming from the floor below them, like underneath their feet. They can feel it on the bottom of their feet banging. Terrified, they creep down the decaying stairs, barely breathing. They get to the bottom of the landing, and that's when they hear the footsteps. Heavy boots grinding into broken glass on the floor, and it's walking straight towards them in the pitch black. There's no flashlight beam, no voice, just the steady, terrifying walk of something that knew exactly where they were, but they did not see anything but pitch black. So they sprinted to their car, slammed the doors, and tore down the road. But escaping the factory didn't mean that they left whatever that was behind. Whatever they woke up in that factory followed them straight home. A few days later, the LED lights in their apartment started flashing and going off by themselves. Thinking it's a short, they plug them completely out of the wall and the lights are still going off. And the lights keep flashing and they're totally freaking out at this point. And as the lights are flashing, this one roommate, she looks up into the corner and she starts screaming. And then, boom, complete total darkness. And she's telling her other roommates, did you see that? Did you see that up in the corner? And the other roommates look up there, and as their eyes adjust, they see it. This big black mass sitting up in the corner. And they couldn't really see it at first, but as the moonlight shines in and it hits its face, they see this wide smile stretching across its face. And it begins to crawl down the wall. Now like and follow for part 2, and don't forget to clock out. Never forget to say goodbye on a Ouija board, or you might regret what you bring home with you. If you missed part 1, go watch that first. But basically we left off where 3 roommates were staring up at the corner of their ceiling in a pitch black room with this spider-like humanoid figure staring down at them, smiling. Welcome to the Graveyard Shift, your late night hub for terrifying tales. Grab your favorite mug, clock in, and don't forget to lock your doors. The Graveyard Shift officially starts now. Okay, so they are all staring at this thing up in the corner of their apartment, and they all just jump up and run out the front door at the same time. And nothing really happened after that too much. So it was like a couple weeks before the next episode, and they all just kind of convinced themselves that it was like a group hallucination. They didn't want to believe what they actually saw. It had been a couple of weeks, and then it started again. One of the roommates was alone in her bedroom when all of a sudden she started hearing this violent banging coming from the inside of her closet. And she sits up in her bed and stares at the door, and all of a sudden she sees the handle start turning on its own, and the door starts creaking open. And she's like, I'm getting out of here. So she jumps up and she runs into her roommate's bedroom and she asks if she can sleep in there. Her roommate says yes, of course. And then nothing else happens for the rest of that night. So the next night, she's way too terrified to even try to go to sleep in her room. So of course she asks her roommate again, is it okay if I sleep in here? Her roommate says yes, of course. They both fall asleep. Nothing has happened. And in the middle of the night, they both wake up at the same time because there is this massive weight they feel sitting on their legs. and they turn over and look up, and they see this thing sitting on the bed on their legs, and they try to jump up and get out, and all of a sudden they're pinned down to the bed, and the blanket is like tightening around the mattress with them underneath it, and the thing jumps up onto the ceiling and is just upside down staring at them backwards as the sheet is just tightening and tightening around them, and they're kicking and screaming and trying to get the blanket off. And all of a sudden the blanket lets loose, and they're able to jump up, and they jump up and grab onto each other, and they're screaming and crying, and they look up, and all of a sudden the entity is gone. So they get up, run out of the house. They drive to one of the roommates' mom's house, and they end up staying the night there. They didn't get any sleep that night, of course. So they didn't go back the next night. They didn't go back to the apartment for like another week. And they're like, okay, well, we have to go back there. That's where we live, you know, so, you know, what are we going to do? So what they do is they end up calling a priest and from their church, and the priest goes there and does like a full clearing on the house. And luckily after that, like nothing too serious happened anymore, but sometimes even like years later, they still feel like they're being watched, and the house gets really cold and stuff like that, and sometimes they'll see things out of the corner of their eye, but nothing serious like that. And that is why you do not want to forget to say goodbye on a Ouija board.
Hey, right now, I'm not scared. Like, I know this ain't evil. Did anyone else have a ghost friend when they were younger that kind of followed them into adult years? Because I kind of feel like my little ghost friend is following me to my adult years, and I don't know. But let's talk about it. So when I was younger, I had this little girl ghost named Sarah. I don't remember much of her. I remember seeing her only one time when I was like a little bit older, maybe when I was like about 6, something like that. But when I was a little kid, I had a little girl ghost named Sarah. I don't remember much of her, but a lot of my family members, my mum, my siblings, my uncles, my aunties, my cousins, they have had experiences with her, and they've seen her, they've seen some weird shit. I don't remember much of her, so I can't really tell stories, but from what my mum and my aunties now would tell me, when I was younger, I used to like to roll the ball, and the ball would roll back to me. One time, my brother heard running down the hallway. My mum would see a little girl sitting down the hallway. One time, my auntie got hit in the back of the head, but no one else was in the room. There's also a photo of me and my sister. I don't know where the photo went, but it was a photo of me and my sister, and in the hallway, in the dark hallway, there's like a little girl peeking with long hair. So this is what she looks like. She's like a little girl, long dark hair and a white dress. And in the hallway, you can literally see a little girl peeking. Ooh, that should give me the shivers in the hallways right there. I'm actually scared right now. Yeah, so that's basically the experience when I was younger, my little ghost friend, what she looked like, her name, whatever. But as I'm older, I don't see her, but I've had nightmares of her. Literally, I've had nightmares of her. The first nightmare I had was when I was a teenager. I'll set the scene. I'm sitting at my dad's house and I'm sitting at the heater because it's cold. My dad's sitting and looks at the hallway and he looks at me with the most scared look on his face. And he says, Liam, don't look in the hallway. I'm like, what? And he goes, don't look in the hallway. Please don't look in the hallway. So I get up and I don't know why I had no control over this, but I just get up and I look in the hallway. Bang, right there in the hallway, she's standing there with the long hair. What? Bitch, I just got scared. So she's standing there with the long hair and a white dress, standing in the hallway, and I freeze. I just become paralyzed. And then she starts pulling me towards her. It's like I'm gravitating towards her, but very slowly. And I still remember the feeling of it. It was such a scary feeling. She's pulling me towards her and pulling me towards her slowly. And the moment I touch her face, I wake up. And let me tell you, in the dream, she has no face. I can't say her face. I can't tell you what her face looks like. But the moment I get in contact with her face, I wake up. And it was such a scary feeling, like I'm so relieved to wake up. Fast forward to last year, just at the end of last year in December, I had the same dream again, but this one was a little bit different. So I'm at my cousin's house, and she's getting the kids ready for bed, and I'm supposed to have a shower after the kids. So I asked her, I was like, oh, cuz, are the kids done with the shower? Then the kids run past me, and she's like, yeah, cuz, like, the kids are done. And to set the scene again, the bathroom is like, when you open the bathroom door, it's like a hall to get down to the actual shower. So I turn my head and I look, and as I look, bang, standing right there. I have to look again because my hallway's door's open. I'm so scared. Hold on. Anyways, she's standing right there again. Long hair, white dress, just standing there. And I start running. And I start running, but I'm kind of in slow motion. It's like a force is like pulling me back. And I'm running, but everyone around me is like normal. They're normal fast motion. And Mum's like, run. And she's like, don't look back. And then in the dream, I have no control over my actions. You know what I mean? I look back. bang, right there again, she's standing there with the long hair and the white dress, and I freeze, and she pulls me towards her again. And it's such a scary feeling. Like, I can't describe to you how scary the feeling is, but she's pulling me towards her very slowly. And every time I get to her face, I wake up. And my cousin was like, "Oh, cuz wait, did you have a nightmare, something like that? Cause you were like screaming, like not screaming, but like, you know, making noises in my sleep." Because I had another nightmare about Sarah, and it was the exact same dream. And it's like, I don't know, if for some reason I have this feeling that it's her message to me saying that she's always going to be around. Because I haven't seen her since. I have not seen her since, heard her since. But I just feel like that's her message saying she's always going to be around. And I'm telling you, I know for facts. I have a feeling when I have children one day, she's going to be their friend. And that's when she's going to fully come back to me. I just know it. Like, I can feel it. I feel like those dreams is her message to me, saying that she's always going to be around. And I'm not like scared of her or anything like that. Like, I'm a little bit scared out right now because my hallway's up. I don't want to see nothing down there. Damn, I'm home alone. It's such a scary... I don't know. Has anyone else like have a little ghost from when they're younger and you see little signs that they're always going to be lingering around? Or, I don't know. But I don't feel like she's evil. Like, I know when something's not right. I say right now, I'm not scared. Like, I know this ain't evil.
For decades, officers responded to motion alarms at this old mansion. No intruders, no suspects, just one girl standing silently at the window on the 3rd floor. Scary story time. For a little geography, I grew up in a small rural community in the foothills of western North Carolina and still live there. So this story begins when I, Mel, 62, was only 13, just a kid riding his bike. I would ride my bike down the street as I approached the old rundown, dilapidated 3-story Victorian mansion, and my stomach would knot with dread, my legs going faster and faster until I was well past the overgrown, vine-covered structure. Fast forward, now I'm 18 and in high school. The mansion has now been remodeled and is a historic location and a museum. A Charlotte TV station does a story for Halloween and lists it as one of the most haunted locations in North Carolina. For one of my classes, we take a tour of the mansion. Originally constructed as a 2-story residence for a wealthy, eccentric diamond dealer, he was unsatisfied with the lack of impressiveness of the home and literally had workmen saw the house in half, jack up the top floor and build a 2nd floor in between, and now have a 3-story home. There are photos of this construction process in the museum. During this tour, we had a psychic medium with us. When we were on the 3rd floor, she became physically ill and overwhelmingly sad, saying this room was a place of great sadness, that someone had been held there against their will for many years. Noting that this one particular room still had locks on the outside of the 2 doors, which accessed the room. The windows also had locks on the outside. This kind of validated the psychic's account for us. Fast forward another 6 years, and now I'm a deputy for the county sheriff. The mansion constantly has alarm violations, almost never an entry sensor, but always an interior motion on the 2nd or 3rd floor. The mansion has an extensive collection of vintage and antique dolls. I have responded to as many as 5 to 6 times a night, and never, not once, have I or any other officers had an actual break-in. Go in at 10 p.m. and everything is in order as it should be. Go back at 3 a.m. and the dolls are on the floor, removed from a locked glass case, and the case is still locked. Cold spots where you could see your breath and the hair on the back of your neck and arms stand up on hot summer nights. This literally goes on year after year. All the officers knew the mansion was haunted. Then one cold winter night, one of my part-time reserve officers responded to a call to the mansion, and because I had a very long, boring 12-hour shift, I headed that way too. The officer clears it before I arrive at the mansion and requested a meeting at a small country grocery store parking lot. Now, mind you, this officer was part-time, and as we would say for his real job, he was a professional pilot and flew very large cargo jets all of his adult life. He said he just became a deputy sheriff because it was a long life dream and helped us part-time by filling in. We were a small agency in a small town. He looked kind of shaken up. I asked him what was wrong. He seemed a little unnerved. He asked, "Have you ever seen anything down at the mansion? Anything odd?" I said, "Well, other than the unusual dolls being moved, cold spots, and unexplained alarm activity, not really. Why do you ask?" "Oh, never mind, it's nothing." I said, "Go on. You can't just leave me hanging. What happened?" He asked me if I'd ever seen anything unusual on the 3rd floor, and I told him no, but I certainly had felt uneasy on the 2nd and 3rd floor. He said tonight he pulled up and got out of his patrol car and was shining his mag light around when he saw a young girl, probably about 12 to 13 years old, that she was just standing there staring at him. She was holding the drapes open with her right hand. He said after what seemed like forever, she just stepped backwards and the drapes closed. He was very shaken by this and would often avoid answering an alarm call at the mansion if he could. Fast forward again, about 2 years later, and now it's my turn. A cold, quiet night, about 2 a.m., alarm call, motion on the 3rd floor, a call I've probably gotten hundreds of times before. I pulled in and cut on my alley light, a very bright side light at the bar lights on top of my patrol car. My usual routine when I respond to an alarm call at the mansion was to cut on my alley light, circle the entire building once while using my flashlight to focus on the doors and windows. After I've made a complete circle, then I would park, walk up to the doors, and physically inspect them to see if I had an unsecure entry point. Not tonight though. As I pulled in and start past the south-facing side of the building, I have my alley light on and I'm looking out the driver's side window of my patrol car with my mag light. I started with the bottom floor and very quickly shined across the building, looking from door to door and window to window until I reached the 3rd floor, and that's when I froze. There on the 3rd floor at the 2nd window is where she stood, a pretty young girl with very long wavy hair wearing an early 1900s style dress with lace up and down to the right and left of buttons. Her hair on the right side was draped in front and the left was back behind her left shoulder. I could see her right arm holding the curtain back about 12 inches, just looking out at me. It seemed like I stood there and looked at her forever, but in reality it was probably only a few seconds, and just as quickly as I had seen her, she was gone. She stepped back into the darkness and the curtain swayed from where she had released it. I can actually say a chill ran up and down my spine for a few moments. I definitely had the heebie-jeebies. I did search the house because that was what I was supposed to do. I might tell you that I searched it quickly and found nothing unusual. I cleared that night and never told anyone for a very long time what I had seen. Probably a year or two later, I was working with the reserve officer again. We pulled up to talk one night and I told him, "You know, I never told you, but I saw her, just standing there looking out the window in her dress with all the ruffles and lace, just staring, not moving, not blinking, nothing. Then she just stepped back and was gone." He replied, "You know, that place gives me the creeps, and there's just something not right about it." We talked a bit longer and I agreed it certainly did give me the creeps too. Over the years, another officer saw her looking out the 3rd floor window, never smiling, never waving, just looking, and then she'd be gone. This is a true story, although I don't know if there are many who would admit to it. I retired in 2015. I never saw her again. That was the one and only time she chose to reveal herself to me. Many years have passed, and the sheriff's office still gives out alarm calls at the museum, mostly motion detected on the 2nd or 3rd floor. So, what would scare you more, the moving dolls or the girl at the window? Let me know.
I made the mistake of reading this story when I was home alone, and it made my skin crawl. So good luck, turn on a light, and let's get into it. So this story takes place in a very haunted house that is located in a hamlet. I did not know what that was before this, so I got a little education. So let's mentally travel to Molino, Oregon. This is a very secluded area with only a little over 2,000 residents. So this story we're going to talk about today takes place at around Christmas time when Shelby was around 8. So one night she's trying to fall asleep and she's really struggling and starts to out of nowhere feel like she's being watched. So she takes her eyes and looks over to her cracked bedroom door because that is where the feeling is coming from, and she sees her dad standing there. He is standing there, staring at her through the crack in the door, not blinking. Neither of them say anything. Shelby's staring back, but obviously she's blinking. And eventually she's like, "I don't like this." And she throws her blanket over her head. When she takes it back off, there's no one standing at the door. And this all happens within a few minutes. So Shelby gets up really quick, leaves her bedroom, and walks down to her dad's room to make sure everything's okay, because why did he do that? Her dad's sound asleep. Like, that man has not moved in hours. So whatever that was not her dad. She asked him about it the next morning even, just to make sure, and he was like, I've never gotten up to check on you once. This is such a small house, I would hear you if you needed something. Ew!
So listen to me.
Story time about my ghost friend, because I'm curious if anyone else has seen him. He has been with me for as long as I can remember. He comes and goes. Like, I don't always have him around. Sometimes I see him a lot. Sometimes, like, I've gone a few years without seeing him, and I only just recently started seeing him again, so I'm just wondering if anyone else, I'm just kind of curious if anyone else has, like, seen him before, because I don't have, like, a connection with him, and he doesn't want to have a connection with me. He just shows up sometimes. Won't talk to me, won't communicate with me. He likes to, like, stand in corners, like, dark shadows, places where ghosts like to be. And I'm very nonchalant about him because he's been with me my whole life. I'm very used to him. He's not scary anymore. But this is what he looks like. So he's very tall. He's a very, very big man. Like, I describe him as, like, he's the size of a fridge. Like, he seems like he's a huge guy. He's wet. He is sopping wet all the time. He's got long, stringy black hair. Someone described him. They were like, I was talking to somebody about him the other day, and they were like, oh, like The Grudge. Yeah, actually, it does. It kind of looks like The Grudge, but, like, not skinny. Like, he's a big, solid unit. But anyways, the wet, black, long, stringy hair. I can't really see his face. He's always wearing a trench coat, a very, very long tan. Again, it's like a very, very dark khaki, but it's wet. You can see, like, he's just soaked constantly. I never can see his pants because the trench coat is covering it, but he is wearing, like, big black boots. And again, I don't know this man. I don't know him. I don't know anything about him. He's just kind of around, and he comes and goes from time to time, and he's back recently. And I'm so curious, has anyone else seen him? Let me know.
My grandpa used to say, there are things in the Appalachian Mountains that you just don't talk about after dark. Especially things that can sound human. So back in the early 2000s, there was a man from East Tennessee driving home late one night after helping his brother repair a fence line out near the mountains. It was one of those heavy Appalachian nights where the fog hangs low through the trees and every road feels darker than it should. No radio, no traffic, just gravel under the tires and the woods on both sides of the road. And that's when he heard it. His mother's voice, clear as day, calling his name from somewhere deep in the trees. Problem was, his mother had been dead for almost 3 years. At first he tried convincing himself that he was just tired. But then the voice came again. Closer this time. Soft. Almost sweet. Baby, pull over. He said every hair on his arm stood up because it sounded exactly like her. Same voice, same accent, same way that she used to talk to him when he was growing up. And against all better judgment, he slowed his truck down, and then he saw something. Standing inside the tree line. Tall. It was way too tall. Its arms looked long, too long for its body. And even in the dark, he could tell something was not right. It was just shaped wrong. And then it stepped forward into the headlights. He said its face looked almost human, like something pretending to be a person, but not fully understanding how people actually look. Its eyes reflected bright white like a deer on the side of the road, and then it smiled, wide, too wide. And his mother's voice said, "You don't leave family behind." He slammed his foot on the gas and fishtailed down the gravel road, trying to get away. He made it home shaking so bad he could barely get out of his truck. His wife running outside asking what happened, and then he stopped and stared at the passenger side door. There were muddy handprints smeared all down the side of the truck, like something had been running beside him in the dark. He never drove that road again at night. And around here, older folks still warn people about voices in the woods. Because if something calls your name out in the Appalachian Mountains and you're alone, you don't answer it.
Guys, it's a mortuary. So at the side of me is Saltburn Mortuary, built in 1881. This place had to be built because of the amount of sailors who drowned at sea and were washed up on the beach. Before Saltburn Mortuary was built, bodies were actually taken to the Ship Inn next door. This is now heavily used just as a pub, but once upon a time, there was bodies below. I'm going to take off. So as much as this place is very much closed off, someone has kindly built me a ramp. So let's see if it holds me. Oh my God, pass the camera, pass the camera. I can't get in. I tried, I can't. I'm only little. Oh my God, look at this place. Look, the old mortuary slab is still intact. Now the doors have been closed off from the inside in. Of course, we're just poking through a little window. But can you imagine what this place used to look like? And how many bodies would be stored here?
We can affect you.
Can you affect me now? Can you throw that stone at me? Nicely. Is there any spirits with us? Is there any spirits in this building? Were you maybe a sailor that was left out at sea?
No.
How many spirits are here with us? Why is it so windy? Ah! I'm being branched! Right, this is the part where we sneak back over the barrier and pretend we were never here. Welcome to Saltburn by the Sea. That side, by the way, is the ship. That's where they used to bring the bodies before they actually went to the mortuary. Is this worth a lemon top? Or a Mr. Whippy? It's got to be worth a Mr. Whippy.
I went camping near a remote lake and something pale stalked my tent for 2 hours. Scary story time. I got back from a trip 14 years ago, and honestly, I still can't bring myself to turn off the lights in the hallway. All this happened back in July of 2012. My friends and I were camping by a lake. It's a remote spot, maybe 30 kilometers from the nearest village. At night, I woke up to something scratching against the tent's rainfly. The sound was very strange, not like a branch in the wind, but as if someone was dragging dry, bony fingers across the fabric. I thought it was a prank, so I stayed quiet and listened. But then a heavy, wheezing breath came from just behind the thin layer of nylon. When I finally risked a look outside, my flashlight caught something in the darkness that shouldn't exist. A few meters away from me, perched on a fallen tree, sat a creature. It was completely hairless, with deathly pale skin stretched so tight over its skeleton that its spine looked like it was about to burst through its back. It sat on a broken, twisted posture, with its knees pointed upwards, slowly turning its head. It had no nose, just 2 dark slits, and its eyes, huge, black, and bottomless, reflected the light from my flashlight. The most terrifying part was when it leaped to the ground. It dropped onto all fours, its arms unnaturally long with thin, clawed fingers. It didn't run back into the woods. Instead, it began to circle the tent, making a sound like clicking joints and a muffled, guttural croak. I locked myself inside, clutching an axe, praying for dawn to come. It wandered around for another 2 hours, sometimes stopping and pressing itself right against the tent fabric. I could see the silhouette of its long fingers. When the sun began to rise, everything went silent. In the morning, I found tracks on the ground. They weren't animal paws, but prints resembling human hands, with extremely long fingers and deep gouges from claws. Once I got home, I started scrolling through old archives and creepypasta forums, and I stumbled upon a description that made my blood run cold. From the looks of it, what I encountered that night is most similar to the entity the internet calls the rake. The same proportions, the same terrifying way of moving, and that feeling of total paralysis when looking at it. Now I know for sure that those old stories about the pale man aren't just fabrications for easily scared teenagers. And that's the end of the story. So have you ever experienced something in the woods that you still can't explain? Let me know.
To tell me if something like this has ever been reported to them. So it's a mom and dad and 2 kids going to the California location, and the kids are sleeping in these bunk beds. And then the parents got this adjoining room, with the connecting door that they can leave open at all times for themselves. So they have a wonderful day, everyone goes to bed, they leave that door open, they make sure that both the outside doors are completely locked so no one can come in, and around midnight, the 6-year-old son gets out of the bunk bed, runs to the parents' room, crying, very upset, and the parents are like, "What's wrong?" And he says that he saw a big kid with a dark shadow, terrified him. He does not want to stay in that room. The dad remembers that he closed all these doors, but he's never seen his son so freaked out, so he goes to check just to make sure. He sees nothing. About 3 hours later at 3 a.m., the mom frantically wakes up the husband and said, "Did you hear that? Did you hear someone scream, Mom?" They're already kind of freaked out about their son, so the dad goes to check on the daughter, and she is sitting in the corner with a blanket on top of her, hyperventilating, terrified. And so the dad picks her up and also takes her to the other room. As he's carrying her, she says, "Be careful, Dad, he's still here." So again, the dad goes back, checks all the locks, everything is still closed, no one has been into this place. And so then he goes back to ask the daughter what she saw, like what's wrong. The daughter said she was laying on the top bunk when suddenly she saw something walking towards her, and she thought it was her father until he got closer. She said this thing was taller than her dad and skinnier than her dad and had white...
People say this is the spider bear, and yeah, it's one of the most terrifying cryptids ever talked about. This thing was first rumored to be discovered in Australia, but somehow this bone-chilling footage came from a motel deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The man staying there started hearing strange noises crawling through the ceiling, and at first he thought it was just a raccoon stuck in the vents. Something normal, something explainable, but then he made the worst mistake possible. He started recording. Listen closely to that clicking sound in the background, because if you know the old Appalachian rules, you already know what that means. The moment that claw pushed through the ceiling, any sane person would have run or burned the place down, but he didn't. He kept filming, and this ended up being the last video ever recovered from his phone. So let me say this clearly: if you're ever staying in the mountains and you hear something stretching above your head, don't investigate. Don't make a sound, turn off the lights, and pretend you were never there.